On the surface, Nier Automata is a game about robots, androids and the interactions between them. In reality, Nier is a game about hot mommy androids, the human condition, and a cautionary tale of what no pussy does to a man.
Sacrificial lambs. All of us. Isn't that hilarious? Doesn't it make you laugh?
I'll tell you what you call the police. Get what you fucking deserve!
Hello everybody, my name is Unstoppable Live, better known as Triangle Man, and I have a PhD in having opinions. I have been granted such titles as Worst Reviewer Ever, and I'm here to tell you about Nier Automata, a game about the temptations of the flesh. Dude, I wanna fuck her so bad, I just wanna get in between the cheeks and be like Anyway, get your lotion ready, fire up Rule 34, and let's get to it. Nier Automata is a game developed by Square Enix, released in 2017. Nier Automata, from now on simply referred to as Nier, is a story-driven, hack-and-slash action RPG video game where you get to follow around Android 2B on her quest to kill as many innocent machines as possible. Now before I get any deeper into it, I need to mention that Nier is not for the faint of heart. In fact, there is a good chance that Nier might not be for you. Because understand that the story requires you to be in the intellectual elite, because the cameraman is trying to kill you, and, to be honest, because the game can be pretty fucking hard sometimes, and checkpoints are few and far between. What the fuck? To put it lightly, this game is often used to gauge anger issues. As a person suffering from ABS, adult baby syndrome, this game changes a man, and not necessarily for the better. It's a lot like working at Amazon. You get hot android women, but you lose your sanity. A trait that I, for one, am willing to make. Now don't worry, if you are suffering from ABS or any other form of anger issues, the game isn't that hard, and there is even an easy mode. Beware though, that playing on easy mode will often result in being called a casual by the Nier fanbase, who are, well, to put it lightly, fucking insane. At one point in my playthrough, I was stuck. So I went to ask for some advice on the game on Reddit, and the calm and reasonable people of the subreddit told me, quite reasonably, to kill myself. Good times. Now on to the gameplay. When you first launch the game, you get straight to action by shooting a bunch of robots simply defend entire territory. After flying for a while, you crash straight through a fucking wall, breaking your plane. Women pilots, am I right? After this crash, you get your first proper taste of combat, and holy shit. The combat in this game is just mwah. Listen, I might be jumping the gun a bit, but Nier has one of the most refined and best feeling combat systems of any game I've ever played. The combat is flashy, fast-paced and intense, while still being manageable enough for the casual player to comprehend and experience. Every single hit feels like a minor victory, and utilizing all the different tools in your kit to create combinations feels extremely rewarding when done correctly. The best part of combat by far is the fact that, unlike many games, it doesn't get boring. This is primarily achieved through the fact that you don't really hit a hard cap at any point, because you can always find new ways to combo attacks, and with the variety of enemies, you'll always have to adapt your style to fit. For example, when you're fighting a big unit, you can generally lay down huge long combinations before having to do a chain of dodges. On the other hand, when you're fighting a more proactive enemy, you'll generally have to settle for shorter and faster combinations as to have enough time to dodge the enemy's attacks. When you combine this aspect with the fact that oftentimes you'll be fighting a huge group of enemies of different combat styles, you'll have to switch up your fighting style multiple times each fight, going from area control to single target damage to dodging to ranged and so forth. Another factor that makes combat, at least for me, more fun in Nier than in other games is the fact that you generally have a good mixture of reward and punishment. In many games like, say, Assassin's Creed, the game will make you feel like a god by having you be a fucking god. While this is fun for the first 15 or so minutes, it quickly wears off and becomes monotonous. On the other hand, there are games like Dark Souls which make you feel completely shit because nothing does damage and you get one shot by anything that moves. I'm so fucking done! Nier, at least on normal difficulty, manages this mixture really fucking well. Now, the combat is great, but it's not perfect. There are a few things about Nier's combat that, despite its brilliance, drag down the potential. One of those things is the fact that while combat is extremely responsive, the enemies aren't. Oftentimes when you hit an enemy with anything less than a special attack, they'll simply shrug it off and not react. In return, this has a tendency of making you feel weak, regardless of your power level. Now, this isn't a huge fault that completely ruins the game, but it is a factor that gets more noticeable the stronger enemies you fight as your damage starts to dwindle. Now, it does make sense for some more powerful and massive enemies to not react when being hit, but it doesn't make much sense when fighting more common ones, especially small trash mob enemies which are supposed to be able to kill in a few hits. Again, not the end of the world, but it is something that I wish could, at least on some level, be addressed in the future. The other thing that is a bit more frustrating is the fact that dodging feels somewhat inconsistent. At times, dodging feels instantaneous and insanely responsive, while at other times you'll be spamming the dodge button and nothing happens. Again, this isn't a huge problem that destroys the combat, but whenever it does happen, it completely nullifies that flow state you get, and it's a damn shame. Oh yeah, as for the 2D style of combat, the 2D combat can go fuck itself. Anyway, that's enough about combat, let's rewind a little. You crash through the wall, break your plane, and get your first taste of combat. You beat the robots, fight this big fuck off buzzsaw thing twice, and after completing this fight, yeah, good luck with that. I'm sure you'll do fine. Help! Help! Luckily, your favorite CSGO player comes to help.
To me!
If you manage to beat this titan, you get to rescue Samsung Galaxy 9S, who is fucking dead. Or, at least should be. After this, the big guy wakes up again, and you get to fight him in your brand new Power Ranger suit, and that's pretty much the end of the tutorial. I gotta say, it's a very good one, and it instantly hooks you in with some crazy shenanigans and enemies to fight. But you know what the best part of the tutorial is? It takes about 30 minutes to complete, and fun fact, you're not invincible. And the game doesn't have autosave. That is to say, if you fuck up and die during the tutorial, you'll have to redo all of this. Good luck. This tutorial is great, but it brings up one of the big issues I have with the game, which is the lack of save points. Now let me make this clear, save points in the overworld are plenty, and I don't have an issue with that. What I'm referring to are large sections of the game in which you have no possibility of saving in between, effectively requiring you to beat everything in one take. The tutorial is a good example of this, where dying just once, no matter how far in, will result in a total reset, wiping out 30 minutes of gameplay in an instant. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Replaying large sections of a game isn't fun, but extremely frustrating. I was lucky enough to beat everything in the tutorial first try, so I didn't run into this issue in my first playthrough. However, if I had died and gotten reset all the way to the beginning, I would have probably not played the game at all. In fact, I would have probably baby raged, broken a few controllers, and then refunded the game. There is nothing enjoyable about replaying sections of a game that you've already completed, especially from a story perspective, as much of this game is filled with dialogue that now gets repeated for a second time. It's a fundamental and recurring flaw in the game that for some fucking reason only gets fixed in certain boss fights where you're expected to die. The biggest question is why the fuck they bother to add save points to some fights and not others. I mean, it's such a simple fix that anyone with even a surface level understanding of games can implement. Just add a save point before every boss fight, it's really not that hard. Now there is an argument to be made that littering games with save points removes tension, like in GTA 5 where everything you ever do gets saved. I think that's a fair point. But the issue is that in the same vein as we can agree that there can be too many save points, there has to be a point where save points are too few. And unfortunately, Nier falls into this trap from time to time. I don't think it's a controversial take that having to replay upwards of half an hour of gameplay is a bit too much.
Oh, but you see, the lore is that you get autosave. It would actually go against the law.
I don't care. Bad gameplay mechanics are bad, regardless of the reason for implementation. Anyway, after completing the tutorial, you get sent to Detroit, which also functions as the main world you'll be exploring. In this massive open world, you can run from the greenest plains imaginable straight to the desert in about 5 minutes. In this open world, there are a lot of dangers, ranging from harmless robots to massive big fist big dick robot boys to even the most dangerous enemy of all in this hyper-futuristic game. A fucking deer. You might think I'm joking. I am not. If you don't believe me, I recommend going ahead and smacking one. Tell me how it went. Anyway, your first task when landing on God's green earth is to meet up with the Resistance. What are they resisting? The urge to fuck 2B. My solution? Right. Resistance is a recurring group that for some reason you have to keep helping. I'll be honest, in the entire game, not once did these guys actually do anything of value. They're basically like Ukraine because they keep asking for favors without giving anything of value in return. But just because the Resistance is useless, does not mean that the Resistance is useless. In fact, the Resistance camp opens up a plethora of opportunities which come in the form of shops. I recommend stacking up all out on healing items because healing in this game is completely balanced and not broken at all. Just trust me. On top of this, you can upgrade your weapons and your character as long as you have the moolah. If you don't have the money, sucks to be you. I recommend fishing. For some reason, it is a great moneymaker, because despite not needing any food to live, androids pay top dollar for the rotten treasures of the sea. My guess is that they use it for erotic roleplay to simulate the stench of fine women like Cardi B. Erotic roleplay aside, there are a lot of things to do, and almost all of them include violence. You can choose to follow the main campaign and story, you can choose to do some side quests, or you can just choose to explore and find cool stuff. The world isn't something that's insanely unique, but it is fairly straightforward. For me, personally, I don't really give a shit about exploration, which is why I don't care to comment on specifics. But, in my experience, if you choose to explore, there's a lot of good stuff to be found. The only downside is that sometimes you walk somewhere you're not supposed to and get a really memorable experience. But that's enough about exploration. For most of you, the most important aspect is the campaign, which mostly consists of violence, and in rare cases, ultra-violence. It's very wacky, it's very interesting, and most importantly, it's very fun. The boss battles, for the most part, are very well executed, with the exception being this fucking crybaby who spams the same 4 attacks on repeat for the whole fight. It might surprise you that he's heavily autistic, but don't worry, in this better world, beating the disabled is completely acceptable. While on the topic of the campaign, let's talk about the story and characters. I don't know how to say this without offending anyone, but it's kind of mid.
Boy, y'all, ain't no way. Ain't no way. There's no way you hype this up like that and then came with that. I think you just killed the rest of your career. Like, the career you had left is done.
Now, to preface this section, I don't hate the story or the characters. In fact, toward the later half of the game, I think it starts to get pretty interesting. But leading up to that, the story is extremely convoluted and surface level. The central issue I had was that the characters of 2B and 9S are really boring, with 2B being sort of a dismissive asshole and 9S being a cock for most of the game. Now, I know that there is an explanation for 2B being kind of cold, because, you know, I played the game, but even when that revelation comes, it holds very little weight since it's at the very end of the game. The issue is that when you're playing through the main storyline of the game, everything is, by design, shrouded in mystery, and the more interesting details don't come out until it's too late. The parts that you can pick out at the moment tend to feel generic despite their uniqueness, as stupid as that sounds, and the more heartfelt and emotional parts tend to fall flat because I can't build a connection with the main cast, so I don't really give a fuck about their motivations or feelings. Take a game like God of War, where the character is also quote-unquote emotionless, but the way it's conveyed to you makes you feel a human connection to Kratos' struggle, aspirations and motivations, so when something drastic happens you feel moved by the experience. You don't really get that in Nier, in my opinion, because the game, intentionally or not, does not let you develop a deeper connection with the characters. The other issue with the lack of character development is that it makes the heartfelt story moments feel really cringe, for the lack of a better word. Because of the lack of connection, when you hear someone like, say, 2B scream from the top of their lungs in a fit of rage, it doesn't feel angry or exciting, but rather it just feels awkward and uneasy. The voice acting isn't bad per se, but the way it's executed in the game makes the dramatic scenes feel more like comedies.
You son of a... I'll kill you!
Yes! That's it. That's the feeling. Pure hate!
Oh my god, are you fucking serious? I don't care, listen, I don't care what anyone says. That shit was pure ass. Every single story point until C, if you know you know, feels like a repeat of everything that's already been done and apparent for a while. Oh my god, these robots are acting just like humans. That's crazy. Yo man, they're not humans man, they're robots man, let's kill them man. Wait, actually, what if they're just like us? Wouldn't that be like so crazy? And repeat that until infinity. It's obvious to most players from pretty early on that the machines have some level of human emotion or something resembling that. Now it makes sense that 2B and 9S don't get it straight off, but the game drags on for way too long with this cluelessness and becomes really tedious after a while. By the time the game drops the facade as a big reveal, it's already been teased so often you'd be fucking stupid not to get it. This in turn becomes frustrating as the player because you're exploring this world with these clueless dumbfuck supercomputers who, despite all the intelligence in the world, can't figure out what you've known for the past 10 hours. It makes you feel like your time is being wasted and very little plot movement is actually made, because despite the plot moving fairly quickly, to you, the player, it doesn't seem that way because the only revelations come to the clueless characters. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the story does get better toward the latter half of the game, and it actually gets really good. The final ending of the game, despite being somewhat predictable, is very well executed. Now, there are some obvious spoilers here, but for example, when Pascal's memories get erased, that was the first point in the game where I genuinely felt connected to a character and the pain they're going through. It killed me inside to have to basically pull the trigger on a character that had been a great source of joy to me in the game, which is funny because when 2B, the main fucking character, died, I wasn't all that distraught.
No! Not my android ass cheeks! No!
To put it this way, the ending sequence is so fucking good that it really overshadows the rest of the game by showing you how good it should have been all throughout. But the issue is that despite the ending being great, it's not really a good way to measure the story and its quality. It's sort of like saying, yeah, the whole movie was shit, but the ending was good. It's not an easy pitch that the game gets good toward the end of the experience, you get what I'm saying? In short, the story isn't horrendous, but many of its plot points fall flat, the characters are completely unrelatable and unlikable, and overall, it's a mixed bag of great ideas mixed with mediocre pacing and execution. Moving on from the story and characters, I'd like to take this final section to briefly talk about the easy mode, because even if it's not a central mechanic of the game for most people, I would still like to draw attention to how well it's done in the game. The easy mode in Nier is done really fucking well, letting you completely customize the level of easiness you want to achieve instead of being a fixed baby mode difficulty. To give a brief explanation of why the easy mode is so good, I first need to explain the chip system and how it works. In Nier, the main way of upgrading your character is through upgrading weapons, and more importantly, through chips, which basically function similar to a rune or skill tree system where you can insert chips to boost stats or give special abilities. For example, a health chip will predictably raise your HP, and a regeneration chip will regenerate health. The way the easy mode utilizes this system is great, because some chips you find are easy mode exclusives and feature things like auto heal, auto evade, auto fire, and so forth. I personally really like this system, because you can choose and customize the easiness of your personal experience, because ultimately what works for me might not work for you. Personally, I would hold off on using some of the more extreme chips like auto evade and auto attack, which basically make you unbeatable, but it is nice to note that if you feel a need for them, they are an option. It's a really good system that allows for everyone to enjoy the game in their own way and for you to customize which things you'd rather not focus on. Once again though, if it is your first time, I would try normal mode first and see how you feel about the gameplay. Anyway, Nier Automata, a game about violence, love, robotics, humanity, and most importantly, fat, juicy android cheeks. It's not a perfect game, it's not for everybody, but despite its flaws, it pulls through. One of the most memorable video game experiences I've had in a while, and one that I give my sincerest recommendation. 0 out of 5, it fucking sucks.